The Australian government's climate fantasy just collided headfirst with economic reality, and the sound you're hearing is Chris Bowen's entire political career crashing down around him. What I'm about to reveal will expose the biggest government cover-up since the last Labor disaster. The Business Council of Australia just dropped a nuclear bomb on Bowen's climate dreams, and the fallout is so devastating that senior Labor MPs are reportedly in emergency meetings trying to figure out how to distance themselves from this absolute catastrophe. This isn't just about failed policy, this is about a government minister so completely out of touch with economic reality that he's been willing to sacrifice Australia's entire industrial base on the altar of international virtue signalling. While Chris Bowen's been jet-setting around the world making grand promises about Australia's green future, the nation's top business leaders have been doing the math, and the numbers are so terrifying that they are finally speaking out. The Business Council of Australia didn't just question Bowen's 2035 emissions targets, they obliterated them with the kind of brutal economic analysis that destroys political careers and sends governments scrambling for damage control. We're talking about over $500 billion in new investments required, $150 billion in annual export losses, and the complete restructuring of Australia's economy based on technologies that may not even exist yet. But here's the part that will make your blood boil. Bowen knew this was coming. Sources inside the Department of Climate Change are telling us that internal modelling done months ago showed similar catastrophic costs, but the minister chose to ignore his own department's warnings because they didn't fit his political narrative. This is either gross incompetence or deliberate deception on a scale that makes previous Labor disasters look like minor accounting errors. Nick Cater's analysis hits the nail on the head when he suggests that Bowen should be feeling relieved he didn't set even more ambitious targets. But here's what Cater didn't mention: the current targets are already economic suicide. The modelling that's emerged from the BCA isn't just a wake-up call, it's a death sentence for Australian manufacturing, mining, and energy-intensive industries that employ hundreds of thousands of hard-working Australians. Let's break down exactly what the Business Council discovered when they actually bothered to do the economic homework that Bowen apparently couldn't be bothered with. The $500 billion investment requirement isn't just a big number, it represents a complete transformation of Australia's energy infrastructure, manufacturing base, and industrial capacity. We're talking about rebuilding everything from power generation to steel production, from aluminum smelting to chemical processing, all within the space of a decade. But wait, it gets worse. The $150 billion annual export loss projection is based on conservative estimates of how rapidly other countries will transition away from Australian fossil fuel exports. If global demand drops faster than projected, or if competing renewable energy exporters undercut Australian prices, those losses could be even more devastating. Bowen's gambling Australia's economic future on the hope that other countries won't be able to produce clean energy more efficiently than we can. The timing of this BCA intervention couldn't be more politically explosive. Just weeks after Bowen stood in international forums promising that Australia would lead the world in clean energy transition, the nation's most influential business lobby has essentially called him a fantasist who's living in a policy dreamland disconnected from economic reality. What's particularly damaging for Bowen is how the BCA framed their criticism. They didn't attack climate action itself, they attacked the reckless speed and unrealistic timelines that Bowen has been promoting. When Australia's business leaders are telling a Labor government to slow down on progressive policy, you know that minister has lost the plot completely. The internal Labor Party dynamics around this issue are reportedly toxic. Sources close to the Prime Minister's office suggest that Anthony Albanese is furious with Bowen for creating a political crisis that could define the entire term of government. Cabinet ministers who were already skeptical of aggressive climate targets are now openly questioning whether Bowen's approach is politically sustainable. Here's what makes this situation even more devastating for Bowen: the BCA isn't some right-wing think tank or fossil fuel lobby group. This is an organization that includes CEOs from companies that have been publicly supportive of climate action and renewable energy transition. When your natural allies are telling you to pump the brakes, you've clearly lost control of the policy debate. The $500 billion investment figure deserves special attention because it reveals just how disconnected Bowen's planning has been from financial reality. To put this in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to Australia's entire annual GDP. We're talking about mobilizing investment capital on a scale that would require unprecedented government borrowing, massive tax increases, or both. Yet Bowen has never explained to Australian taxpayers how this transformation would be funded. Even more concerning is what the BCA modelling reveals about job losses and industrial disruption. While Bowen talks about creating green jobs, the Business Council's analysis suggests that the transition timeline he's proposing would destroy existing employment faster than new opportunities could be created. We're looking at potential unemployment spikes in regions that depend on traditional industries, with no guarantee that renewable energy jobs would be located in the same communities. The export loss projections are particularly devastating because they strike at the heart of Australia's economic prosperity. Coal and gas exports don't just generate revenue, they fund schools, hospitals, infrastructure, and social services through taxation and royalty payments. If Australia loses $150 billion annually in export income, that's $150 billion less available for everything from Medicare to education funding. What's been most frustrating for industry leaders is Bowen's apparent refusal to engage seriously with economic modeling that challenges his assumptions. Multiple business groups have tried to present alternative transition timelines that would achieve emissions reductions while minimizing economic disruption, but the minister has consistently dismissed these proposals as insufficient for meeting international commitments. The BCA's intervention represents more than just policy criticism, it's a direct challenge to Bowen's competence as an economic manager. When business leaders publicly question whether a government minister understands the costs of his own policies, that's not just embarrassing, it's career-threatening. Behind the scenes, Labour MPs in marginal seats are reportedly panicking about how to explain Bowen's climate policies to constituents who work in industries that would be devastated by rapid decarbonisation. These MPs are caught between party loyalty and electoral survival, and the BCA modelling gives political opponents devastating ammunition to use against vulnerable Labour candidates. The international implications of this domestic revolt against Bowen's timeline are potentially enormous. If Australia's own business community is saying the government's climate targets are economically unrealistic, how can Bowen maintain credibility in international negotiations? Foreign governments and international investors are watching this debate carefully, and public splits between government and industry don't inspire confidence in policy stability. What makes this crisis particularly acute for Bowen is that he's built his entire political reputation around being the minister who could deliver ambitious climate action while maintaining economic prosperity. The BCA analysis essentially argues that this promise was always impossible, that you can't have rapid decarbonisation and economic stability simultaneously, at least not on the timeline Bowen has been promoting. The modelling also exposes fundamental flaws in how Bowen's department has been calculating the costs and benefits of climate policies. While government projections have focused on the long-term benefits of renewable energy and emission reductions, they've consistently underestimated the short-term disruption costs and transition expenses. The BCA has essentially accused the government of cooking the books to make unrealistic policies appear economically viable. Industry sources suggest that major corporations have been privately expressing concerns about Bowen's approach for months, but the Business Council's public intervention represents a breaking point where diplomatic silence gave way to open opposition. When companies that have invested billions in renewable energy projects are telling the government to slow down, that sends a powerful signal about policy overreach. The political ramifications of this business revolt extend far beyond climate policy. If Labour can't maintain the confidence of the business community on their signature policy initiative, it raises questions about their economic management credentials across the board. Opposition politicians are already using the BCA criticism to argue that Labour can't be trusted with major economic decisions. For Chris Bowen personally, this represents the kind of career-defining moment that makes or breaks political reputations. He can either acknowledge the economic realities highlighted by the BCA and modify his approach, which would amount to admitting fundamental policy failures, or he can dig in and fight, which risks further alienating the business community and creating ongoing political damage for the government. The ultimate irony is that Bowen's aggressive climate targets may actually harm long-term environmental outcomes if they create such economic disruption that future governments feel compelled to reverse course. The BCA is essentially arguing for a more gradual, economically sustainable approach that would be more likely to maintain political support over the long term. This isn't just a policy disagreement, it's a fundamental clash between political ambition and economic reality, and the Business Council of Australia has just forced Chris Bowen to confront the consequences of his climate fantasy in the most public and politically damaging way possible. If you thought tonight's story was wild, trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. So don't stop now. Click on the video right here on your screen to continue the chaos, the drama, and the inside scoop only we deliver. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and join the Australian News CC family where the real stories come to life. See you in the next one.